Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest true story that someone has ever told you? Please remember to like, share, hype, ask, and listen for shoutouts, and subscribe.
A few years ago, I took a summer-long trip where I would stay at people's houses overnight to sleep and such. When my friend and I arrived at the house, we met the husband and wife who had 2 sons in the military and 2 young daughters adopted from a tribal country that I can't quite remember. We asked about their daughters, and the mother tells us that they were very nice children when they were adopted, except for when they would take them to church with them. The girls would start acting crazy and yell and scream and act completely different from how they normally acted. Eventually, the girls became Christian, and the behaviors completely stopped. They believed that the girls had been demon-possessed. That night I was asleep in the house on the top bunk of a bunk bed with my friend on the bed below me. I had completely forgot about the story I was told and didn't even remember about it until after it happened. I could feel something was moving in the room. Then my bed started shaking. I was a bit nervous at first, but I figured it was just my friend, so I woke him up. I asked him if he was shaking the bed, and he said no. Then I asked him if he could feel the bed shaking, and he said no. I could still feel the bed shaking very clearly, and I honestly was scared. I closed my eyes and tried my best to ignore it, and eventually ended up falling asleep. I woke up the next morning and told my friend about it, and he said that he felt something really wrong in the room as well. I never actually saw anything, but it's one of the scariest experiences of my life. This happened to my family members of mine a couple of years ago. My great-grandma passed away, and the house that was hers and my great-grandpa's was given to the family. My cousins moved in with their son after several years had passed. The little boy started to play downstairs and talk to an imaginary friend while down there. He would also look out the door window and explain to his parents, "There's the guy." My cousins would look, but no one was there. Then one day their son happened to see a picture of my great-grandpa, whom he'd never met, and told him that's the guy. Soon after, they had a daughter and had a baby monitor in the room. Then during the night, they would hear soft talking, and from a man's voice coming through the monitor. Now, I've been to that house and never had such an experience, but it seems children are more in tune with that sort of thing. I was super young when my great-grandpa died, but I heard he was a great man. Wish I had a chance to talk to him from the other side. I was at my ex-girlfriend's house last year. We were sitting on her couch with her sister. They both suddenly covered their eyes, and I stared at them with a confused look. Her sister said, "Don't look in the corner of the room, she's right there." In the corner of my eye, I saw something in a dress crouched down in the corner of the room. I closed my eyes, and when the coast was clear, I noped the f*** out of there. My father swears this, among other things, happened to him when he was little. My dad is a pretty level-headed dude, so take that as you will. He was about 12 and was walking down the street. He sees this little boy riding a seriously old bike from like the 30s or something. This happened in the 70s. My dad is obviously looking at this kid with a what the expression on his face, thinking that this kid is strange. The kid looks at him and keeps riding toward a wall. At this point, my dad thinks he's about to see some strange kid hit a wall and hurt himself. However, what happened, my dad swears, is the kid just went through it. My dad thought he was losing it, so he ran to look at the other side of the wall, but there was nothing there. With 3,000 comments already, I fully expect this to be buried, but this is a story a girl in my chemistry class told my freshman year of high school. One day, the girl was sitting somewhere in the house reading a book. She hears her baby sister laughing and giggling in another room out of sight. It sounds like she's just playing with another little kid, but the baby sister is the only person her age in the house. When book reading girl sees her baby sister walk past, she asks, "What were you doing in there?" To which the baby sister responds, "I was playing with Mary." She comes from a fairly rich family. It's a big old house that has had a few fires in the past. In one of those fires, a little girl died. The little girl was named Mary. I have no memory of this, but my very sane parents still swear it's true 45 years later. I should start by saying that I'm an identical twin. When I was 3 years old, we lived in Liverpool, England. Though it was 20 years from the end of World War II, the city and countryside were still littered with collapsed and burnt-out buildings. One summer, we vacationed at a kind of camping park by the sea. We stayed in a little camper with small bedrooms at either end and a little communal space in the middle. My twin and I had one end and my folks had the other. One night, I woke up screaming and obviously terrified. I kept screaming about the lady who was trying to hurt us and described in what my parents say was chilling detail, especially for a kid who had never seen a movie or TV, a woman covered in blood. I said she had an axe and wanted to hurt all of us. When my parents tried to take me to their end of the camper, I went berserk and started screaming for my twin, trying to wake him up so the baby wouldn't get him. I was so distraught that the only way my parents could calm me was to bring both of us twins to their bed. I spent the whole night shaking and staring at the bedroom door. The next morning, my dad went to the campground store to get smokes. While there, he struck up a conversation with the storekeeper about the grounds and such, having noticed the outline of a large foundation in the grass. He asked whether it had been bombed during the war. The shopkeeper said no. It was a fire that destroyed the building after the murder of the owner who, having been stabbed by her husband, chopped him to bits with a hatchet before succumbing. My dad says he nearly shit himself. Alright, this one is really personal, and I've never told this to anyone because they won't understand how this truly affects me. This is the story of a recurring dream that I've had throughout my entire childhood. There is some things you need to know about my mother's family before I tell you this story. I'm Persian, and my great-grandmother gave birth to a lot of sons. I think about 5 that I know of. What is truly remarkable about this brotherhood of my mom's uncles is that they all radiate the same aura. The dream is like this every single time. I walk up a staircase, or maybe slowly take an elevator. When I reach the top, I see a tropical oasis with the sun burning bright. Imagine standing on a skyscraper in New York, and before you, instead of the city, is a wild jungle with the sun burning bright. At the top, I see a man. What is remarkable about this man is that I have an idea of who he is, but he radiates the same aura as the brotherhood I mentioned. When I realize that he could possibly be my mother's uncle, we both smile and watch the sun as he disappears, and then I climb back down. What is insanely creepy, truly haunting, and gives me the creeps as I write this is what follows when I wake up. When I wake up, my entire body and mind scream for me to find this man. It's like I was destined to find him. I've never had this feeling nor emotion after a dream. Maybe some dreams make me sweat a bit, but none of them manage to replicate the feeling I had in the dream when I wake up. Sadly, my craving to find this man withers when I manage to force myself to sleep again. What is truly disturbing about this entire incident is a fact about the Brotherhood. One of them went missing at the Iran-Iraq War about 30 years ago. His body was never found, and he never made contact. He's what Americans would call missing in action. When I was a little girl, my dad had a job that made us move to different states a lot. We ended up in a small town in Virginia when I was 5 and my sister was 4. We rented a very old house on Church Street. Almost immediately after moving in, my sister and I started having night terrors. That's not odd in itself. What was odd was that we could not be woken up. We were hysterical, and we were dreaming the same things. We would be screaming for Mama, but our real mother couldn't comfort us. We would fight her. We would cry about all the dead people and say we were going to die, and that we didn't want to die. Freaked my mom right the hell out, and she told our new neighbors about it. They were freaked out. Apparently, Church Street was called that because a few hundred years ago, It had been part of the property of the town's church. During a horrible outbreak of cholera, so many people died that they ran out of cemetery rooms and dug a huge pit to throw the bodies in. Later, the mass grave was paved over and made into a street. My mom, normally logical and not one to scare easily, threatened my father with a divorce if he didn't move us out of that area. She really believes my sister and I were being haunted, and that we were being taken over by souls of the 2 little girls who had died and thrown into the mass grave. She won't talk about it much, which is fine with me. My dad told me the story once of how my grandpa knew a guy, I'll call him Bob, that used to work at Area 51. He never said anything about it though, because it was against regulation. Anyway, one night, Bob and my grandpa are at a bar getting wasted and such, and Bob starts talking about Area 51, which was a first. He goes on about the creatures and aliens and UFOs in there, about the experiments and such. My grandpa didn't really pay much attention to it. At the end of their drinking and confession session, they part their ways, planning on meeting up at the bar later that week again. This is the weird part. My grandpa's waiting for his bud at the bar later that week, and he doesn't show. He tries calling and getting a hold of him later, but nothing. He never heard from him again. No one has after that night. He went off about Area 51.
Alright guys, hello again, and thanks for your continued support and all the well wishes coming out from the post shout-outs. So again, keeping the comments alive is really good. I'm now checking them every day, and I want to wish a very happy birthday to Rebecca Miller 3248 on your 39th birthday on October 26th. So a couple days away, but no time like the present. So again, many happy returns, and if you'd like to hear anything, just let us know. Have a great day, guys.
I vacation in Maine every year. We stay at my grandparents' house in mid-state. It's a very rural area. Most of the roads are dirt, houses are abandoned, etc. On her road, there's a cemetery, and a little further down, a really old small house that's been abandoned ever since I can remember. My grandparents, who have lived up there for years before I started going up in the summer, cannot even tell me the last time it was used. Anyway, I was up there with some friends for senior week last year, and they all guys decided to walk down to this house about half a mile from my grandparents' house at night. Thought it would be fun. I initially didn't want to go, but I also knew that if I wasn't there to keep an eye on them, they'd probably do something stupid like try to get onto the property, so I decided to go along to make sure that didn't happen. The house was visibly unsafe. It's posted as no trespassing, and there are barbed wire fences around it. There's a huge full moon that night. I went down to the woods and asking myself, what would Buffy do? I grabbed 2 stakes, partly for humor, partly for protection. We had 2 flashlights between the 4 of us, but the moon was so bright that we hardly needed them. So, we're walking down, and the boys want to stop at the graveyard first. That didn't faze us too much. The moon was so bright that we could see everything, and it's in the middle of the field, so no surprises. Figuring the house could not possibly be scarier than the cemetery, we continue walking. In order to get to the house, you have to walk past a farmette. The owners have a light in their yard for security purposes, but the light doesn't extend really far. About 1,000 feet from their house is the old house. As soon as we got out of the path and on the light, my blood ran cold, chills. It was eerie. The guys immediately wimped out and wanted to go back. At this point, we were about 30 feet away from being able to see the house. And at this point, that's all we wanted to do. And I didn't want to have come all this way for nothing. I kind of shouldered past them, deciding to be the brave one. As I do, I gave them surrounding area one last sweep with my flashlight, just to make sure no surprises. Remember the farmette? There are cows on that farm as well as cats and horses. This was in my full knowledge. Earlier in the day, I had seen the horse in the paddock, so as soon as we reached the farmette, I knew to check this area for the horse, so that it didn't catch us by surprise. I did an entire sweep of the paddock. The horse was not there. Nothing was. However, as I gave the last sweep of the area, my flashlight beam fell on this enormous, hulking, hairy thing with huge glowing eyes. It looked like 7 foot tall, standing man creature, but with hair all over its body and massive glowing eyes. Nothing remotely like a horse. Anyway, I let out this bone-chilling scream, which scared the guys enough to send them running without much of a glance at what I was looking at. The guys tell me it was the house or the horse. I'm totally not convinced. I've spent my entire life riding and training horses, and this thing looked nothing like a horse. My grandmother's uncle was a trader and lived on the border of Afghanistan, Pakistan. He would use camels and donkeys to move his goods. This is before cars were readily available in that part of the world. She told me that one night, while going through the desert alone with 2 camels and a donkey, he heard someone call his name. When he turned to see who it was, he said he saw beings that were so tall that their heads looked like they were touching the clouds. So anyway, he left his camels right then and there and jet using his donkey. When he reached his sister's house a couple hours, he explained what he had seen and that he was in a lot of pain. He died about 2 hours later. When they were washing his body for burial, Muslims usually bury within 24 hours or less, they saw that he had a single hand imprint that stretched across the entirety of his back. From his right thigh all the way to his left shoulder, one handprint. That was freaking scary. Also, my brother was possessed as an infant. He would not eat and would cry when the lights were on, and he would talk to something in baby language when the lights were off and my parents weren't in the room. If they were in the room with him, he would stay eerily quiet in the dark. My parents took him to a Muslim exorcist, and when the thing got out of him, he drank 3 bottles of milk and sucked my mom dry. He hadn't eaten in almost 3 days. Well, once when I was little, around 6 or 7, I went downstairs to go to the bathroom, and my parents weren't home or asleep or something, and my brother was upstairs watching TV. He was around 4. Anyway, downstairs was always scary to me, and him when we were alone. The stairs led right down to the bathroom door, but to the left there was a hallway, dark with no light switch. So I ran down the stairs like we were accustomed to doing, went to the bathroom, and when I got out, I was going to run back up, but then I looked to my right and there's an orb floating around 2 feet off the ground, probably as big as I was. It was opaque. I couldn't see down the end of the hall, mostly white with circular swirly colors in it. I ran out of there so fast. Another time I saw a person in the same spot, a very faint woman wearing a dress. My brother said he was seeing something too, but he might have only thought that because of my experiences. It was so creepy. My parents never saw anything and didn't believe us. The weird thing is I don't believe in ghosts, but I don't know what else it could have been, other than my imagination. My best friend told me that one time she was driving back home late at night from her pizza delivery job and going through some country. This was Jefferson City, Tennessee. Anyways, she was driving along, going a pretty good pace, and she said she saw a person step out into the road directly into her path from out of nowhere. It happened too fast for her to react, but instead of hitting the person, she said that it was in front of her car, then it was inside her car next to her, then behind her car and still in the road. So whatever was out there went clear through her car. I pressed her for details. Did you make out any features? Did you catch a view in your rearview mirror, etc.? But she said she pressed the Cutlass Sierra to its limit and noped the F on out of there. We live out in the country. The road I used to live down in is a dirt road about 8 miles with nothing but big hunting leases on it, acres of undeveloped land, and a few houses. We lived in a big old 2-story farmhouse at the very end of the road before it turns off into more country roads. I was driving home from work one night and just listening to the radio. I looked down for a minute, to change stations, and when I looked up, there was a man dressed in an old Confederate soldier's uniform standing in the middle of the road about 5 feet in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, and I felt that I had definitely hit something. I was sure I ran him over. I hopped out of the car and looked under. There was nothing. The front of my car had blood on it. I searched around the front bumper and found what I hit. It was a coyote. I definitely ran it over. It died pretty much instantly. I dragged it off the road, and even though I was freaked out, I passed the man that I saw off as my eyes playing tricks on me. When I got back in the driver's seat, I'd slowly straightened the car out of my headlights shined on where I left the coyote. No shit. There was that man in uniform kneeling beside its corpse, staring dead at me. I put the gas pedal to the floor and left him in the dust. I'd never been so scared in my life. In 2007, I was living with my parents in Alaska while I attended college. They lived in a nice 3-level house in an upscale part of the city. My room was in the downstairs, the middle floor was the kitchen and living areas, and my parents' room was on the top level. The kitchen was directly above my room, and since it had a tile floor, I could always very clearly hear it when someone was in the kitchen. One morning in early March, I was up late finishing some math homework. My parents had been in bed for hours, although both are known for having occasional insomnia. I heard a door upstairs slam shut and heavy footsteps in the kitchen. It sounded like they had shoes on as well. I immediately assumed it was my dad having trouble sleeping, and I thought I should go up and keep him company. As I left my room, I got a funny feeling about it, and instead locked myself in the bathroom with a cell phone. I called our landline. My father answered and sounded annoyed, said, "What are you doing stomping around the kitchen?" They came downstairs to get me, and together we searched the entire house. We found absolutely no evidence of any intruder. All doors and windows were shut and locked, nothing broken, etc. Additionally, there was snow on the ground outside, but we found no footprints around the house and no mud or water in the kitchen where the intruder had been walking. The thing that made it most creepy to me was that disturbingly strong this isn't right feeling I had as I left my room. It was at least once every few weeks that one of my parents would be up at night from insomnia, and I, being a night owl, would always go up and join them. So hearing someone walking around the kitchen was completely normal. I sometimes wonder what would have happened or what I would have seen if I had ignored that feeling or hadn't felt it at all. Around 10 to 12 years ago, I was in high school and living with my mom, who was recently divorced, and my little brother. We would always hear something that resembled footsteps on the second floor of our house, always ending up making creaking noises and such in our mom's room, which I always attributed to the house settling and whatnot. Well, I would frequently stay up late into the wee hours in the morning, play PC games, watching TV, fapping, etc. And my mom, who worked from home, had always been a night owl as well, would frequently work downstairs, either in our kitchen or a spare bedroom directly beneath me. Whenever she was in the downstairs bedroom, I would hear her talking to whomever she was dating or a friend, whatever, not really hear her, just making out mumbled noises like you would expect from the second floor to the first. So this one night, while I was on summer break, I was up late and I heard her all night long talking on the phone and thought it was odd that she would be up that late. There was no mistake about it. She was downstairs and chatting away at 2 to 3 a.m. and eventually around 4 a.m. I heard her come up the stairs and walk to her room to go to sleep. I ended up going back to bed shortly after and didn't think anything of it. The next day, I wake up around 1 p.m. or so and go downstairs to get something to eat and drink, and she's downstairs in the kitchen doing some paperwork. And I mentioned to her, "Wow, you were up late last night, huh?" She replies back, "What do you mean?" And I tell her that I had heard her on the phone all night and to go to bed shortly before I did. She looked confused and told me that she had gone to bed at around 9:30 p.m. because she had to meet a client of hers first thing in the morning. So I'm naturally feeling weird about the conversation and ask her, "Are you sure you went to bed that early? I swear I heard you up until at least 3 a.m. And I even heard you come up the stairs and go to bed." And she reassures me that she definitely had gone to sleep several hours prior. I didn't have my TV on. I was just playing a video game with the volume low so it wouldn't wake my brother in the next room. But I know that I heard talking and footsteps. That house always gave me the creeps, for one reason or another. But that experience definitely topped the cake. We moved out shortly after that, and I've never experienced anything like it. When I was about 5, I had a nightmare of some guy telling me he'd already met my older sister and brother, and now he wanted to get to know me. The dream wasn't really a nightmare, but I woke up drenched in sweat and feeling really scared and ended up sleeping in bed with my mom since my dad was out of town on business. I woke up to the same man standing at the foot of the bed, reaching his hand out to me like he wanted to grab my hand. He didn't seem real. I could kind of see through him, and I didn't want to wake my mom, so I just hid under the covers till I fell asleep. The next morning I told her about it, and when I described the man, she started sobbing. Apparently I described her younger brother, whom I didn't know about, who died a year before I was born in a motorcycle accident. I also hadn't seen a picture of him at that point. My family member had put any pictures of him away after he died, until I told my mom about the dream or experience.